he understands who he is dealing with. The master negotiator in Vietnam today now is not Donald Trump and the art of the deal. It's Kim Jong-un and the art of the steal and the cheat. This is behavior he's replicated. His father, his grandfather did the same thing, offering concessions, then reneging on them and starting a crisis and doing the same thing over again. And Donald Trump is falling for precisely the same con.
And there is Donald Trump in a blue tie, descending from Air Force One. He'll be stepping onto that red carpet in just a moment. You mentioned how important this is and the power position that Kim Jong-un is in. I want to bring in NBC's chief global correspondent, Bill Neely, who is also in Hanoi. What has Kim Jong-un been up to today? I mean, it's 9 p.m. there. He's had a full schedule.
Yeah, so Kim Jong-un is here. He's already been actually out on the streets. He went to visit the North Korean embassy. North Korea, of course, interestingly, just like the U.S., has an ambassador here. It's one of the many reasons why Hanoi was chosen for this summit. He left his hotel. He was accompanied by those 12 jogging bodyguards that we saw for the first time in Singapore. And, of course, he arrived here earlier after arguably the longest journey by any leader to any summit in about half a century. It took him 2.5 days to get here, 2,500 miles across China by bulletproof train. But he is here now for, well, we don't know. Is it going to be history in Hanoi? It's not as historic a summit as that first meeting in Singapore, but arguably it may be more consequential because the first summit, of course, was as much about symbol as the summit itself. The meaning, if you like, was in the meeting in Singapore, but it ended with that vague declaration that they should work towards denuclearization. They didn't define what denuclearization meant, and since then, nothing has happened. There's been no sign that North Korea is disarming. In fact, U.S. officials point to increased production of nuclear fuel, still working on ICBMs, long-range missiles that potentially could reach the United States. So Kim, on the surface, looks to have done absolutely nothing to disarm. Indeed, U.S. officials say they don't know whether he's even taken the decision or not to disarm. We have no inventory of his nuclear arsenal. There's no timetable, no roadmap. So that is the hard work that this summit is meant to begin to do, to try to implement some of those vague promises from Singapore. So look, the pressure really is on. It's simply not enough to do the grip and grin, the handshake and the smiles and the flowery words. That may be good enough for the letters they seem to exchange between one another. But now the world needs to see some action. And, you know, this is, I mean, we've got used to the idea that it's not a nuclear crisis anymore. But remember what's been happening on the other side of the world. India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed nations, are confronting each other over the unsolved problem of Kashmir. You know, just under the surface of the world's events is a potential nuclear crisis. And of course, just 15 months ago, we were potentially looking at nuclear conflict between the US and North Korea. So it may not be as historic a summit as Singapore, but it's certainly consequential. The stakes remain high here.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.